The wide open road looks sweet and tasty, but it is death. Hi there, it's Christy with the Chirp YouTube channel. I got a message from a wonderful viewer, and she has become a friend. Hello, Amy. About her son who has had some difficulty with what in the professional world we call elopement. My husband was very confused by this term. In our field, it means running away in unsafe ways. Her son has been eloping for a long time, and it's getting worse as he gains cognitive ability and independence. So, obviously, something needs to be done because he is not safe in certain circumstances, and we want at all times to keep our children and our students safe. We do our best anyway. Sometimes unsafe situations arise. Sometimes children put themselves in unsafe circumstances. Certain kinds of unsafe, such as monkey bars, teeter-totters, roller skating, are good kinds of unsafe because they're teaching children skills and they are helping kids to learn boundaries with their own bodies, how to use their bodies, how to encounter the physical world. And kids do need to do that. Kids do need to take some risks when it comes to their physical selves. However, of course, there is a line past which something is just dumb and not safe in a bad way. And that's what we, as the adults in the situation, are trying to prevent. A lot of kids, especially those who are on the autism spectrum or who otherwise have social emotional delays or difficulties, don't understand that boundary. They don't understand that certain risks are beyond the reasonable risk range, and they aren't smart to do. They do not understand the consequences of their actions, and they don't understand that they could actually get hurt or die doing certain things. I'm going to split my thoughts on this matter into 3 different categories. The first one is physical or practical considerations. This is where we talk about all the ways that we practically prevent the child from running away. The reason this needs to be the first thing we do is because the elopement for the child has become a coping strategy. It has become a method of communication that works for the child, or he wouldn't be doing it anymore. If the child is bored, runs away from school, and gets a little excitement and adventure, that was a reward for the behavior. That behavior worked for exactly what he wanted it to work for. If the child is frustrated, doesn't want to clean his room when that's what he's supposed to be doing, he runs away. Instead, he gets to go to the park instead of cleaning his room. Once again, he's been rewarded for the behavior. Therefore, the behavior is going to continue. Whenever we talk about behavior, we have to remember that what gets rewarded gets repeated. If the child runs away and what happens after that can be interpreted as a reward from the child's perspective, like getting to go to the park or getting an adventure when otherwise he would be bored, those things are rewards, and therefore the child was rewarded for behavior that we don't want to see. We need to prevent those rewards from happening. So we need to take all the precautions we possibly can to prevent the child from escaping, from running away. Of course, we're thinking practically, first of all. So I recommend that all families who have difficulty with these have latches on all their doors and windows. Windows are usually less difficult because they can be locked, and kids have difficulty manually opening those locks. They're a little bit stiffer. Doors, of course, kids are very used to opening doors and unlocking doors. So the best thing that I have found is a latch that's way up high on the door, higher than the child can reach. And either it's a flip latch or it's like a bolt lock style latch. These kind of things will prevent kids from getting out because they can't reach the latch. I love them. Many of the families that I've worked with who had kids who loved to escape use these latches. They work really well. Of course, they only work if you use them. So please get in the habit of actually latching those latches. If your child spends a lot of time at a daycare or at someone else's house, like grandma's and grandpa's, that kind of thing, make sure that they also have these latches on their home. Treat it like you would treat dangerous chemicals in the laundry room. You put child locks on those things because the child doesn't understand that the dishwasher pod is not candy. We have to treat it the same way with the wide open road. The wide open road looks sweet and tasty, but it is death. So we don't want the child to have access to it without an adult present to assist and train along the way. Another thing that I recommend is that you have an alarm system put on your house. You don't have to have it hooked up to the alarm company. You don't have to have it hooked up to the police. You just want it to make a noise if doors or windows should happen to be opened, because it will alert you to the fact that someone has come or gone from your house. And if your child has escaped more than once, even one time, the confusing part is, how did that happen? When did he leave? How did she get out? These kind of machines, this kind of technology tells you which door was opened, which window has been opened, and it makes a noise. And you can, of course, adjust the noises to make louder noises, and it helps to know if someone has gone out, because then you know right away, run, we've got to get the kid. Of course, doors and windows shouldn't be getting opened because we've already taken that first step, but sometimes our patterns that we put in place, sometimes our routines and systems break down, and so we want to have another system in place just in case. And so this alarm system is that other system, just in case system. Let's talk about some more technology. There are companies that make bracelets, necklaces, I think potentially even an under the skin chip like they would use with a furry companion and family member, that will tell you via an app on your phone exactly where your child is. I looked at one of them, and I'll put a link to this one down below, so take a look at it, where whenever your child is anywhere at any time, you have a one-way ability to listen. So if your child is on the bus, you can listen, you can hear what's happening on the bus. If your child's at school, you can listen at any moment and hear your child at school and hear what's happening. A lot of our kids who are minimally verbal, this is a great thing because parents and family members don't know what's happening with their kids. And by the way, the air conditioning just came on. You know that I live in the Arizona desert, and today the high is expected to be 110 degrees. So I can't really manage to film a video in between when the air conditioner is on because it's just going to be on. I am considering getting a little lapel mic, which might help, but I think you can still hear me okay. Just don't pay attention and your brain will filter it right out. But I thought I would mention, since we are in summer now and some of you might notice that noise coming and going, that is what it is. These technologies with the apps and with the ability to listen to kids, it also has a GPS, so you can tell exactly where your child is. So if your child has escaped, in spite of steps 1 and 2, your child has escaped, you can tell where your child is. Of course, you have to make sure the kid can't get off the bracelet or whatever it is that you have on the child. So keep that in mind. Let's talk now about a very low-tech way when you are out in public. I worked with a young girl. She was 3 when I started working with her. I thought she was 2, but Grandma says 3. And she lived with Grandma, and Grandma had some significant mobility issues, and this girl was a runner. She got out of her house multiple times. She escaped from school a few times. She didn't actually escape from school once she was in school, once she was actually in her classroom, but she ran a number of times between when Grandma parked the car and when Grandma was trying to take her to her classroom. And of course the teacher and Grandma tried to always connect so that they could hand her off, but this young woman now, young girl at the time, Grandma couldn't do hand holding because she had to manage her walker, And so, of course, our young friend would run. And thankfully there were wide open fields of playgrounds, but then someone else had to go chase her down. And we were way behind because she had a head start. These situations are very dangerous because kids get into circumstances that are extremely unsafe. Cars, of course, are always a problem if there is a lake or the ocean or, I don't know, anything could happen to them when they just run because our kids don't have appropriate fear responses. That's part of the diagnosis. They don't understand and they're not afraid of stuff. So we need to make sure that kid cannot get away. So one of the things I recommend is a body harness that goes around the torso and that has a harness that you can hold on to or that you can have hooked on. If you have a mobility issue, you can have it hooked onto your scooter or onto your walker. And now I assume that a 3-year-old, she was very tiny at that age, she would not have been able to pull over her grandma and the walker with this harness. However, if your child is 10 and a large child, and you are worried about your own balance, that might not be super safe. In which case you might want to have 2 people who are together hanging on to this kid. Sometimes hand holding does not work. And obviously if this child is a runner, we need to have another option because we need to keep this child safe. So look into those harnesses, and if the child is staying close by, there's no reason that the harness needs to be necessarily very noticeable. It can be under a jacket, all of those things. But we do need to keep the kid from running away. It's just not safe, especially if you have issues with running as fast as the child runs. If you can run faster than your child, this is slightly less of an issue. However, I still will tell you to not let your kid even run from you because children who are runners often see it as a game. They often enjoy being chased, and we want them to have back and forth relationships that are fun. Not in this way, however. We need to make sure that our kids are not associating a dangerous behavior with fun and laughter because that will make them want to repeat that behavior also. If they think it's fun, well, they're going to do it again. So we need to prevent the behavior in the first place since we know that they will think it's fun once they do it. Those are my practical considerations. I know they're not earth-shattering, but at least they'll give you some ideas. And we need to get those in place first before we take any of the next steps. So work on those and then move on to the communication strategies that we want to use. The first communication strategy is that we need to provide the child visual ways to communicate the feelings that we believe are leading to the elopement. For example, if we think a child runs away because he is frustrated because something is too hard for him, we need to have a visual way that he can say, "Too hard, I need a break," or maybe just, "Break, please." Whatever the level of language of the child is, we want to accommodate that. We want to make it possible for the child to tell us he needs a break. Even if the child is verbal, we still need to have visual ways for this to happen. When I am upset, and I am a very verbal person, very communicative, my communication skills go down the drain. I can't communicate effectively at red alert. And it is the same for our children. Even the language skills that they do have go right in the toilet when they get worked up, when they are at red alert. Or when they even get slightly frustrated, a lot of times they can't communicate with all of their skills. We need to make sure that we make that easy for them. So for example, if you know your child is frustrated because something is too hard, he says, "I want a break." We pay attention and we say, "Okay, we're going to do something else for 5 minutes." We don't let him get out of every activity just because he says he needs a break, but we do we respond to that right away. If we respond to frustration, to the communication of frustration immediately, there's no need for running away because you're providing another alternative. If a child likes to run away because he wants to play a game with you, then create a safe way to play that same game. We used to play chase in the playground with a couple of our kids who were runners. And we created visuals that said, let's play chase. And then the kid would say, let's play chase. And then he would run and I would chase him. And then I would run and he would chase me. And then it was an interactive game, and he could request it so that he wasn't just taking off and I didn't know it was a game, and he's not safe. We always played this within an enclosed area. So if you have a backyard that's enclosed, if you have a park that has walls around it or something like that, that would be great places to play chase. And we also teach, we only play chase in the backyard, or we only play chase at the park in this one area, because that's the only time it's safe. It's important to teach that as well. And we'll talk about that more in the next section. Think about those things that you think your child is expressing by running away, and create visual ways for the child to communicate those feelings. Whether it's, I want to go to the park, I want to play chase, I have to go to the bathroom, I need a drink, I'm hungry, I'm frustrated, I'm bored. Whatever you think those thoughts are, create a visual and then have a strategy for meeting that need in a better way than just running away. Obviously, if the child says, I'm thirsty, we say, okay, here's a drink. He doesn't have to run away. He just has his need met after communicating it. If he has to go to the bathroom, obviously he says, bathroom, and we walk together to the bathroom. And we hold tight that little hand, because you are not going to run away on your way to the bathroom. No. As with any other skill that we teach to kids, we have to teach it at a moment that is not the red alert moment. At red alert moments, we are not thinking straight, we are not able to absorb new information. So we want to practice using these visuals at times where the child is calm. So the child is calm, is calmly working on something, and we pretend that the child is frustrated, or I pretend that I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated, it's too hard. I look down at his desk and there's this list of pictures at the top that have different things the child might want to say, and I point to break, 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 break. I say, I need a break, or whatever level the child is using words. If the child is nonverbal, we just use one word. If the child uses one word, then we use two. If the child uses 3 words, we use 4. It's kind of the pattern we like to see. So if the child is using one word, I'm going to say, break please, because I want to model it one step up. I say, break please, and then the teacher or another adult in the classroom comes over and says, Christy, you need a break? Let's go sit in the calm down area and read a book. And so then I do that. So we want to model using those tools, those communicative supports. I want to use them. I want to model for the child how he can use them, and then I want to prompt the child to use them when I sense that he's getting upset. Obviously, all of the strategies in the communication section are based on the child having somebody there who's actually paying attention to his communication. If you have a classroom of 20 students and 1 teacher, this is not going to work, because the child will still just run away. You have to make sure that the child can't just get out of the classroom easily, that there is an adult there watching and teaching this communication in the classroom as well as at home, because otherwise it will work at home and it won't work in the classroom, and your child will still be in danger. And I just want to say that fire departments don't often approve latches on classroom doors in schools and in churches, because they want the kids to be able to get out if there's a fire. I have a problem with this because I have never seen a school fire, and I have seen many, many cases of children escaping from schools and putting themselves in danger by running into traffic, from churches as well. My students have never gotten into the road, but they run. And therefore, the danger of a child escaping from the classroom is much greater than the danger of a child being burned alive in a classroom. So I think that that should be taken into consideration, and latches should be put on doors where there are kids who are runners. I'm not in charge of that though, and I realize there are laws. So please do follow the laws of your principality, whatever it may be. However, there is a very sneaky way to sort of make it more difficult for kids to get out of classrooms. You have your custodian or facilities team change the hydraulics on the door to make it harder to push open. I've had friends who did this in their classrooms in public schools, and it worked really well because the door, you can make the door heavier or you can make it lighter, and we want the door to be extremely heavy so that the child can barely get it open. The child could get it open, but it takes a long time and it requires a lot of intention and focus. This gives the adults in the classroom more time, especially if there's some sort of a beep or something that happens when someone starts pushing the door. But it gives the adults more time to catch up to the child and redirect the child back into the classroom. So keep that in mind. Also, as part of the communication section of this video, I want to say that you should definitely be posting stop signs on all doors, maybe even all windows, that says stop. And then right next to the stop sign, you can have maybe a button that says whatever you think the child is escaping for. Maybe there could be two buttons, a blue one that says I need a break and a green one that says I want to go for a walk. I don't know, whatever you think the child is needing this escape for, maybe push those buttons there, or just the pictures that will prompt the child to verbally say what you want him to say. But either way, the stop sign actually does help a lot of kids because they know what that means, and it triggers in their head, wait, I'm not supposed to go out this door without an adult. That's the kind of thinking we want. Part number 3 of this video is the cognitive part. Obviously, we have already discussed in this video that there are certain things that our kids don't understand. They don't understand danger. They don't understand the consequences of certain actions. And we need to help teach them those things. We have put into place protections, the practical part of the video. We have taught better ways to communicate so that we can get our needs met. And now we're going to talk about how to train the kids to better learn about safe and not safe situations so that they can begin to make these decisions themselves. The first way to do this is by using stories, by writing child-centered stories. Of course, these were pioneered by the wonderful work of Dr. Carol Gray, and you can find her work at socialstories.com, I think. I'll put a link to it down below. She does fabulous work. She's written lots of social stories, as she calls them, and done tons of research on this model. And it works very, very well. I am not going to claim that what I'm giving you an example of here is a social story itself, because that is a trademarked phrase. What I'm going to say is stories of this type that are child-centered help our kids to internalize certain things that they wouldn't internalize otherwise. We need to make the story about them, and we need to make it explain circumstances in their lives in a way that as they're thinking about it later, the exact phrases from the story will come up and make sense to them. For example, I have written one right here that might help in this particular circumstance. So I'm going to read it to you. Sometimes I feel like running away all by myself. Running away is dangerous. There are lots of things in the world that could hurt me. Grown-ups will help me stay safe. I can practice being safe by making sure I have a grown-up with me all the time. When I want to go outside, I can find a grown-up and say, let's walk. If I need a break, I can find a grown-up and say, I need a break. I will try very hard not to run away by myself. I will practice being safe by staying with a grown-up all the time. Grown-ups will help me stay safe. A little story like this with some pictures. Maybe you take pictures of the child doing these things with little word bubbles. I need a break. Maybe you use line drawings. Maybe you illustrate it. Maybe your child illustrates it. You read the story over and over and over, 10 or 20 or 30 times a day, so that all of these lines get implanted in the child's head. And then they start to become the patterns that the child actually thinks. It's very, very cool. It's very much like training ourselves with scripture or with certain mantras we want to start thinking. We have to change our pattern of thinking before our actions actually change. And we want to use our knowledge to help our children's patterns of thinking change. So thinking up a story like this, writing a story, illustrating the story, and then repeating it all the time is very helpful. If you have a kid who likes to watch videos, then film a video with your child doing all these things, or with you doing these things. And when your child is waiting for something, play that video. When your child is going to sleep, play that video. Even if it's just the audio, it's still very useful because your child is getting the words. But adding that visual component is much, much better because, as you know, our children are visual learners. We also want to brainstorm and play act dangers that can really happen in the world. So while we're playing, we might want to have someone say, "I'm going to run away," and then run away, and a car comes and hits the toy. We're not being graphic, we're being honest. This is something that really can happen. People do get hit by cars when they run in the street. And then we take the toy to the hospital and the doctor says broken parts and needs medicine, and then he has to come home and stay in bed for a long time. When we play these out, that's also helping the child to be able to better predict some of what the possible consequences of that action might be. Maybe when we're coloring, we can draw a picture of the lake and say, the lake is beautiful, but it can be dangerous. Going in the lake without a grown-up is dangerous. It's not safe. If I go under the water, I can't breathe. If I can't breathe, I will die, and that would be sad and scary. We just have to be pragmatic about these things. Some kids know these things intrinsically. Maybe they know it from paying attention to their surroundings, from other kids, from listening to offhand conversation in the world. Our kids with language difficulties do not learn from that sort of third-hand knowledge that's going on around them. They're not focused on that, and they don't learn from that stew of language that surrounds them. They need to be taught these things specifically and directly. And so we need to specifically and directly teach them that there are things in the world, there are actions that can harm them. They could in fact die from certain things if they make particular choices. We don't want that. It wouldn't be very fun. So we need to teach it. It sounds weird. It sounds like we're going to make them afraid of everything, but we're not. We're being honest about the world. If you think about it, this is probably how your parents taught you why you need to wear a seatbelt. If you don't wear a seatbelt and we get in an accident, you could fly out the window, or you could hit your head on the windshield and die, or your brains could get all shaken up so you could never think straight again. All those things are true, and we all survived being told scary things because we learned lessons. And it's important for us to have a concrete and a practical and calm way of teaching these things. This is not something we can teach when the child is running and I am chasing, saying, "You're going to get hit by a car." That's not going to work. The child is not listening at that point any longer. The child is running and having a great time. We need to teach these at other moments. We need to make sure school is teaching them. We need to make sure that church is teaching them. We need to make sure everybody's on the same page so we're all saying the same thing. So if you do write a story like this, or work with your speech pathologist to do it, work with your child's teacher to do it, make a story, make the video, use all of these options, and play the video, read the story in all of the circumstances of your child's life. Do it at church, do it at daycare, do it at grandma and grandpa's, do it at school, do it at home. All of these different places need to be using the same materials so that the child feels like it's the same. Everywhere he goes, he's hearing the same message. That's really, really helpful when trying to get these messages internalized. If you watch this video all the way to the end, I assume it's because you or someone you know has a child who tends to run away unsafely, and you have been looking for solutions and for ideas, and I hope that you got some good ideas from this video. I know that there is nothing that can just take this problem away. There's not one thing, and that's how it is with all of teaching our kids skills. There's not one thing that's going to fix a behavior or a language difficulty. It's a bunch of repeated teaching on the same topic in the same vein. And this is another one of those situations. I have seen it get much, much better. The kids that I've known who were escape artists, once these things were put into place, their behavior decreased and eventually was eliminated. So please don't lose hope. You too can be a success story in this area. Your child can learn these skills, can remain safe, and I'm grateful that you are wanting to learn all of those strategies. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to leave them below or to email me. I will answer all of them as soon as I can. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.